Evan Ward had worked as a human security officer for many years, but nothing in his long career prepared him for the world of Lysora. Lysora was an alien planet filled with soft colors, quiet voices, and calm hearts. It was a place where violence never existed. There were no weapons, no soldiers, no police, and no lies. People lived with warm light around them, and every day felt like a gentle dream. Evan sometimes wondered how a whole world could stay so peaceful. But he had a job here, and his job was important. He was assigned to protect Siren, the daughter of the Lysoran diplomat who worked closely with human governments. Siren was young, graceful, and full of bright curiosity. She moved like soft water and spoke like quiet music. Her species had never known fear, so she did not understand danger. She had never seen anyone shout, fight, or harm another being. Her eyes had only seen kindness. Her heart had only felt safety. Evan first met her in the main hall of the diplomatic station. She stood near a glowing pillar, her pale blue skin shining softly under the lights. Her eyes carried a warm silver glow, like two moons reflecting gentle rivers. When she smiled, the whole hall seemed to brighten. But Evan felt uneasy today. Something was wrong. He had learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were screaming at him. Siren noticed the tension on his face. "Why does your chest rise so fast?" she asked with innocent curiosity. Evan tried to give her a calm answer. "Just alert," he said softly. But Siren tilted her head like she could sense the sharp edge in his voice. She had never heard a worried tone before, and it confused her. A diplomatic meeting between humans and Lysorans was about to begin. Important guests were walking into the hall, wearing bright robes and carrying small gifts. Everything looked peaceful on the surface, but Evan's eyes kept scanning the shadows. He spotted a small ripple in the glass wall, like a reflection that was not supposed to be there. Then he saw it, a tiny drone drifting high above the ceiling lights, moving too quietly to be friendly. He tapped the small device in his ear. "Control, do you see the drone?" he whispered. The answer came seconds later, static, then a broken warning. "Threat approaching. Target is the diplomat's daughter. Hostile intent." Evan's heart slammed inside his chest. He took one step closer to Siren. She noticed and blinked slowly. "Is something wrong?" she asked, still calm, still unaware of the meaning of danger. Before Evan could reply, the lights in the hall flickered. At first it was small, just a few blinks. Then they went dark for 3 long seconds. In a peaceful world like Lysora, lights never went out without reason. People whispered in confusion. Siren looked around with innocent eyes. She had never experienced darkness filled with fear. The floor shook. A loud alarm burst across the hall. Siren covered her ears, startled. "What is that sound?" she asked, her voice trembling for the first time. She had never heard a warning alarm before. She did not know alarms meant danger, fire, or death. Evan grabbed her wrist gently. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Something deep and dark had arrived. Shadows moved along the upper platforms. He saw shapes, human shapes, moving fast and low. Not diplomats, not workers. These were attackers. Siren's glow dimmed. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Why are people running?" Her voice shook more as she saw humans pushing, shouting, falling. She had never seen panic, never seen fear spreading like wildfire. Evan raised his energy shield and stepped forward. He positioned himself between her and the shadows. Her world had been safe since the day she was born. Now she watched chaos for the first time, and her heart did not know how to feel it. A loud crash echoed across the hall as one of the side doors was blown open. Smoke filled the air. Screams followed. Siren's hands trembled. Her eyes widened, glowing with confusion and fear mixed together. It was the first time she had ever felt fear, and it broke her innocent heart. Evan moved quickly, pulling her close. "We need to leave," he said in a low voice. Siren held onto his arm like a child who had just stepped into darkness for the first time. Her peaceful world had shattered in seconds. The last thing she saw before Evan pushed her into a side corridor was the shape of a human soldier raising a weapon. The weapon pointed straight at her father. She gasped softly, unable to understand why anyone would want to hurt another living being. And the question burned inside her mind. Why would someone target a girl who had never even seen fear before? Even pulled Siren into a narrow side corridor as smoke filled the great hall behind them. People were shouting and running in all directions. Siren could not understand any of it. Her whole life had been soft voices and gentle movement. Now, everything felt sharp and loud. Her silver eyes trembled as she held onto Evan's sleeve. "What is happening?" she asked in a shaking whisper. Evan did not want to scare her, but he had no choice. "Danger," he said simply. "We need to get you somewhere safe." He guided her down the hall, moving quickly but carefully. Every time a loud bang echoed, Siren flinched as if the sound itself could hurt her. She had never heard an explosion before. She had never heard someone scream in pain. Every new sound cut into her heart like a wound. Evan noticed tears forming in her eyes, but she kept walking because she trusted him. They reached a maintenance door, and Evan pushed it open. Inside was a narrow tunnel with dim blue lights. Siren stopped and stared at the long metal walls. "Why is everything dark?" she asked. "Someone cut the power," Evan replied. She touched the cold metal and shivered. Her world never had dark corners or metal paths. Everything she knew was bright and open. This place felt like a cage as they moved deeper into the tunnel. Evan's earpiece crackled again. A tense voice whispered, "Officer Ward, hostile humans confirmed. Mission is abduction. Target is the diplomat's daughter. Repeat, the target is Siren." The message ended with heavy static. Evan slowed his steps. Someone wanted to kidnap Siren. Someone prepared this attack carefully. Siren tugged gently at his arm. "Why are people trying to take me?" she asked. Her voice was soft, innocent, confused. Evan wished he had an answer she could understand. "Some people fear what they do not know," he said quietly, "but I will protect you." They reached the end of the tunnel, where a small service lift waited. Evan pressed the button, hoping the power still worked. The lift doors opened with a metallic creak. Inside, the lights flickered weakly. Siren hesitated. "Is it safe?" "It is safer than staying here," Evan said, helping her step in. As soon as the doors closed, the lift jolted downward. Siren gasped and grabbed his arm. Her species did not have machines like this. She had never felt sudden motion pushing her body. Her breath shook, and Evan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You're doing great," he said gently. But she was still trembling. Halfway down, the lights in the lift went out. Complete darkness swallowed them. Siren froze completely. Evan, I cannot see." Her voice cracked. She had never known real darkness. Her planet glowed even at night. Fear squeezed her from the inside. Evan held her close. "I'm here," he whispered. "We'll get through this." When the lift reached the bottom, the doors opened into a docking corridor filled with red emergency lights. Siren shielded her eyes, confused by the flashing colors. Everything felt unfamiliar and frightening. A group of workers ran past them, shouting warnings. "Get out! Attackers are heading this way." Siren's heart pounded. She had never heard people shout in fear. She did not know fear could spread like fire. Evan took her hand and led her into a side storage area. He tried again to call the command center. A voice answered, but this time it was heavy with dread. "Officer Ward, do not bring the girl here. Someone in high command has betrayed us. Repeat, do not return to command." The message ended suddenly. Evan stared at his earpiece in shock. Betrayal, inside the highest ranks. Someone powerful wanted Siren captured. That meant they had no safe place left. Siren saw the fear in Evan's eyes and whispered, "Why do humans change their hearts so fast?" Evan swallowed hard. He could not explain human politics or corruption to a girl who grew up in perfect peace. He could only protect her. Another explosion shook the walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. Siren screamed softly and covered her ears. Evan grabbed her hand again. "We need to move," he said firmly. He pulled her toward a maintenance stairwell. Her steps were shaking, but she followed him. She trusted him more than anyone else now. As they climbed, Siren whispered, "My world never had fear, but now everything hurts inside. Why does this happen?" Evan looked back at her. "Fear is part of life," he said softly. "But courage is protecting someone even when fear is there." Siren looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. Then, "Are you being brave for me?" Evan nodded. "Yes," he said, "and I won't stop." At the top of the stairs, Evan saw movement in the shadows ahead. Armed humans were searching for them. He pulled Siren behind a crate and whispered, "No matter what happens, stay behind me." Siren nodded, gripping his arm tightly. She had never known violence existed, but now she was walking through a world built from it, and she was no longer just afraid. She was beginning to understand what fear truly was. Evan and Siren stayed hidden behind a large metal crate, listening to the heavy footsteps of the attackers echoing down the corridor. Siren pressed her back against the crate, shaking softly, her silver eyes wide with fear. She had never felt fear before today, and now her whole body did not know how to handle it. Evan held his breath as the armed humans walked past, their boots striking the floor like thunder. He wrapped one arm around Siren to keep her from trembling too loudly. When the last soldier turned the corner, Evan whispered, "We move now." Siren let him pull her forward, but her legs felt weak and unsteady. Every time she heard a distant shout or a metal door slam, her body jerked in shock. Her world never had these sounds. They felt like wounds cutting into her senses. Evan guided her down another dim hallway toward a dark cargo chamber. He knew they could hide there long enough to plan their next move. Inside the chamber, everything was cold and covered in dust. Large crates were stacked to the ceiling, and only a few emergency lights glowed faintly. Siren looked around with confusion. "Why is this room so dark and empty?" She whispered, "This is where they store old supplies," Evan answered. "It hasn't been used in years." Siren hugged herself, trying to calm her shaking hands. She felt like the darkness might swallow her whole. Evan walked to a wall panel and checked the security feed. What he saw made his stomach twist. Attackers were blocking every main path to the escape pods. They were moving with precision. They knew exactly where to search. This was not a random attack. Someone powerful wanted Siren. As Evan turned back toward her, a sudden loud crash split the silence. A group of attackers kicked open a door on the far side of the chamber. Evan reacted instantly, pushing Siren behind another crate. Gunfire lit the room with bursts of harsh light. Siren screamed as she saw bright flashes and heard sharp cracks of sound. She covered her ears, confused and terrified. Her world had never known such noise. Evan fired back, trying to keep their attention away from Siren. The attackers scattered, taking cover behind metal barrels. A stray shot ricocheted off a crate and struck Evan in the side. He gasped and fell to one knee. Siren crawled toward him with wide, trembling eyes. "Evan, you are hurt. You are bleeding." Her voice shook with pure shock. She had never seen blood before. Her people healed naturally and rarely suffered injuries. The sight of dark red on Evan's uniform made her heart twist with pain. She did not understand. Evan gritted his teeth and pressed a hand to the wound. "I'm fine. Just stay down." But he was not fine. Siren could see his face growing pale. She touched his cheek with cold fingers. "Why does this happen? Why must bodies break?" Evan did not know how to explain war, violence, hatred, or cruelty to someone who had never seen any of them. The attackers regrouped, but Evan grabbed Siren's arm and whispered urgently, "We need to move now." Siren looked at his wound with tears forming in her eyes. "No. You cannot walk like this." Then she placed her glowing hands over the injury. Evan froze, unsure what she was doing. Her species carried natural healing energy, but Siren had never used it before. She had only been taught about it in quiet lessons. She had never faced a real wound. Now her soft glow spread across Evan's side, and warm light filled the dark chamber. Evan felt heat under his skin, then a strange, soothing calm. Siren's body shook with the effort. Her breathing grew fast and shallow, but the wound slowly closed when she pulled her hands away. She collapsed forward onto his chest, exhausted. "Siren," Evan whispered, catching her. Her eyes were half closed. "Lie." "I did not know it would hurt so much," she whispered weakly. Healing drained her energy in a way she had never known. Evan lifted her gently and carried her behind another row of crates as attackers approached again. He pressed himself against the cold metal, breathing carefully. Siren's glowing energy still shimmered faintly on his uniform. Outside the crate row, the attackers searched the chamber. One of them shouted, "She has to be here. The order says take her alive." Siren heard the words and clung to Evan. "Why do they want me?" she asked softly. Evan whispered, "Because your father stands for peace. And some people fear peace." As the attackers moved closer, Evan spotted a small vent on the wall, just big enough for them to crawl through. He lifted Siren into the vent first, then crawled in after her. Behind them, the attackers fired at the crates, but the shots missed the vent opening by seconds. Inside the narrow metal tunnel, Siren whispered, "I never knew pain until I saw you bleeding." Her voice trembled not from fear, but from heartbreak. Evan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Pain is real," he said softly. "But you were brave, Siren." She looked at him with tired eyes. "I do not want this world of hurting." And as they crawled deeper into the dim tunnels, Siren realized she had crossed a line she could never return from. She had seen blood, violence, fear, and pain for the first time, and nothing in her peaceful life had prepared her for it. Asterisk. The metal vent carried Evan and Siren into a deserted engineering hallway. The air smelled like old oil and dust, and small sparks flickered from broken wires above them. Siren crawled out first, still weak from the healing she had used on Evan. Her soft silver glow was dimmer than before, and she held her arms close as if trying to protect her own fading light. Evan followed behind her and checked the hallway in both directions. No attackers yet, but he knew they would come soon. Siren tried to stand, but her legs shook. Evan placed a steady hand on her back. "You need rest," he said softly, but Siren shook her head. "We must keep moving. If we stop, they will find us." Her voice trembled, yet she pushed herself forward. Evan admired her courage. Even though fear crushed her heart, she still walked beside him. They moved carefully into the human-controlled quarter of the station. Normally, this area was bright and busy, filled with workers, diplomats, and security staff. But now it felt empty and wrong. Lights flickered, doors that were usually open were locked, and security cameras were offline. Siren looked around with confusion. Why is no one here? Humans always fill these halls. Evan's eyes narrowed. "Something is wrong," he said slowly. "Too wrong." He activated his wrist display to scan for friendly officers. No signals, no movement, no life signs. It looked like this entire section had been shut down on purpose. Siren touched his arm gently. "Did humans do this?" Evan nodded. "Yes. Someone planned this." They turned a corner, and Siren gasped. 3 security officers stood ahead of them, fully armed, blocking the hall. Siren stepped behind Evan, trembling, but something felt off to him. Their uniforms looked real, but their badges were wrong. Their boots had no ID trackers, and their weapons were not standard issue. One of the men stepped forward, smiling in a false friendly way. "Officer Ward," he said, "we've been looking for you and the girl. We have orders to take her to a safe room." Siren peeked from behind Evan, hopeful for a second. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to believe someone would help. But Evan saw the lie in the man's eyes. He placed a hand behind him, signaling Siren to stay still. "What safe room?" Evan asked calmly. The man hesitated. His smile broke for a moment. Then he lifted his weapon. Take them. Evan grabbed Siren's wrist and pulled her back as the fake officers opened fire. Their shots sparked against the walls as Evan dove into a nearby lift entrance. He hit the emergency close button, and the doors slid shut just as bullets struck them. Siren covered her ears, shaking violently. Her breath came fast and shallow. Why? Why would they pretend to help? She whispered. Evan's voice was firm. They want you alive, Siren. They think they can use you. The lift dropped sharply, making Siren cry out as her body leaned forward. The sudden movement frightened her deeply. She had never been inside a machine that moved so fast. Her eyes stayed wide and full of fear until the lift stopped in the engineering bay. When the doors opened, the room was filled with shadows and broken equipment. It looked abandoned for years. Siren slowly stepped out and touched a dusty panel with her glowing fingers. This place. It feels forgotten, she whispered. It is, Evan said. But that's why it's safer for now. They walked deeper into the bay. Weaving between silent machines, Evan searched for a power node to activate a hidden terminal. He needed information, maps, anything to understand the attacker's plan. Siren stood beside him quietly, trying not to think about the fake officers. But her heart still hurt. Her people never lied. They never pretended to be something they were not. She whispered, "Humans change their faces so easily. It frightens." "Me," Evan paused. "It frightens humans too," he said softly. "Not everyone lies. Not everyone wants harm." Siren nodded slowly. Though fear still clouded her gaze, Evan found the terminal and connected his wrist device. The screen flickered alive, showing security logs, coded messages, and troop movements. He scanned through the data quickly, and then he froze. His jaw tightened. His eyes changed. Siren stepped closer, sensing something was wrong. "What did you see?" she asked. Evan swallowed hard. "There's a traitor," he said quietly. "Someone in high command gave the attackers access to the station." Siren's breath hitched. "A human. Who worked with my father?" "Yes," Evan replied. "Someone powerful. Someone we trusted." Before Siren could speak again, heavy footsteps shook the floor above them. The attackers were closing in. Evan turned off the terminal and grabbed Siren's hand. "We have to move." Siren followed him quickly, struggling to stay quiet even as fear made her steps unsteady. They slipped through a side hatch and into another maintenance corridor. But as soon as they stepped inside, they heard voices at both ends. They were surrounded. Siren's heart pounded. Her glow flickered with fear. And Evan knew this was the most dangerous moment yet. Evan pulled Siren backward as voices echoed from both ends of the maintenance corridor. The attackers were closing in fast, their boots hitting the floor with cold purpose. Siren held tightly to Evan's arm, her glow flickering weakly as fear washed through her. Her world had never known anger or violence. Now she stood in the center of it, trembling, confused, and heartbroken. Evan scanned the walls quickly and spotted a loose panel. He kicked it open, grabbed Siren's hand, and pulled her inside a narrow service shaft. The metal walls scraped against their clothes as they squeezed through. Behind them, the attackers. Voices grew louder. "Find them. The girl is the priority." Siren flinched at the harsh command. Her people never shouted orders filled with anger. Each word felt like a strike against her spirit. When they reached the end of the shaft, Evan pushed open another panel and stepped out into a dim operations room. Old screens blinked with weak power, wires hung from the ceiling, and damaged equipment covered the floor. It looked abandoned, forgotten, and dangerous. "Stay close," Evan whispered. Siren nodded and took a slow breath, though her hands continued to tremble. Before they could move further, the door behind them burst open. Armed attackers flooded into the room, forcing Evan and Siren into the center. Siren gasped as cold metal weapons pointed at them. Her knees weakened. She had never seen people aim harm at others. The sight alone made her want to cry. A tall man stepped forward, his uniform darker than the rest, his face sharp and full of cold anger. Siren felt a chill travel down her spine. Evan recognized him instantly. Commander Varek, leader of the extremist group called the Obsidian Front. Varek's eyes locked onto Siren with cruel interest. "So this is the diplomat's daughter," he said. "The glowing little symbol of peace." Siren stepped back, confused and frightened. Her voice was small when she spoke. Why are you doing this?" Varek smirked. "Because your father is destroying human strength with his peaceful treaties. The galaxy will respect humans." Again, once we remove his influence, Siren blinked softly, her eyes filling with tears. "I do not want power," she whispered. "I only want harmony." Her gentle tone made Varek laugh. "Harmony?" He mocked. "You know nothing about the real galaxy. You live in a world with no fear, no pain, no conflict. But power comes from war, not peace." Evan stepped in front of Siren. His voice hard. "You won't touch her." Varek raised a finger, and two soldiers grabbed Evan from behind, forcing him to his knees. Siren gasped and reached toward him, but one soldier grabbed her wrists and held her back, for the first time. In her life, Siren saw real cruelty, the way humans could hurt each other without reason, the way anger could twist faces and turn hearts dark. Her body shook as she whispered, "Why do you choose darkness? Why do you want to cause pain?" Varek looked annoyed by her question. "Because pain shapes the strong," he said. "Your father believes in peace. Peace makes the weak. Weakness threatens humanity." Siren felt something inside her break, not from fear, but from sadness. She whispered again, "My people removed violence from our hearts long ago. We learned that hurting others only destroys the soul." Varek rolled his eyes. "Enough. Take the officer out. Kill him." "The girl comes with us." Siren's heart dropped. "No." She cried. Her voice filled the room with raw pain. Evan struggled against the soldiers but could not break free. Siren tried to pull away, but the soldier tightened his grip. Tears blurred her glowing eyes. She looked at Varek with heartbreak. "You cannot take him. He protected me. He showed me courage." Varek stepped closer to her, studying her glowing eyes. He saw innocence, purity, compassion, things he hated because they reminded him of everything he could never be. He grabbed her chin harshly. "You will learn the truth soon. Peace is a lie." Siren's breath shook, but she did not look away, even as fear crushed her chest. Her voice stayed soft. "If peace is a lie, then why does it hurt you to see it?" Varek froze for a moment. Her words struck something deep within him that he did not want to face. While Varek was distracted, Evan made a sudden move. He slammed his shoulder into one soldier and broke free long enough to punch the other. Chaos broke out. The soldiers stumbled. Varek shouted, "Stop him!" Evan grabbed Siren's hand and pulled her toward an air duct on the far wall. Shots fired behind them, striking the metal around their feet. Siren screamed and ducked as sparks flew, but Evan pushed her into the duct and climbed in after her. Bullets hit the duct door as he slammed it shut. Inside the dark, narrow space, Siren collapsed, shaking with fear. Evan held her shoulders lightly. "You're safe." "For now," he whispered. Siren looked at him through tears and asked, "Why do they hate so much?" Evan did not answer right away. He simply held her as she cried, because even after seeing cruelty, betrayal, and violence, Siren still refused to hate anyone, and that made her stronger than any soldier in the room they had just escaped. The air duct rattled softly as Evan and Siren crawled deeper into the narrow passage. Siren's breathing was unsteady and her hands trembled as she held the metal edges for support. Every sound in the duct, the echoes, the scraping, the distant thuds felt like a threat to her. Evan moved in front, guiding her through the darkness with steady motions. He looked back often, worried about how pale and exhausted she looked. After several long minutes, the duct opened into a hidden storage room filled with old tools and silent machines. Evan helped Siren down first, making sure her weak legs could hold her. She stood shakily, her glow dim, her eyes full of worry. Evan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Just breathe," he said gently. "You're safe for a moment." Siren closed her eyes and tried to calm her racing heart. "I did not know fear could feel so heavy," she whispered. "It fills my chest. Like it wants to stop me from moving." Evan nodded slowly. "That's normal," he said. "But you're still standing. That makes you stronger than you think." Siren looked up at him, her silver eyes soft. "My people never taught us this," she said. "We learned harmony, healing, light, but not how to live inside a violent moment." Evan could not help admiring her. Even surrounded by danger, she still spoke with gentleness. She still hoped for peace, but they did not have time to rest. Evan opened a wall panel and checked the station map. They had only one option left: reach the communication relay. If they could activate it, they could warn Siren's father and call for support. Without that signal, the extremists would control the entire station soon. "We have to move," Evan said softly. Siren nodded, though fear still lingered in her voice. "I will follow you," she said, "even if I do not understand this place anymore." They left the storage room and entered a long engineering hallway. Pipes hissed with hot steam. Wires dangled from the ceiling, and the floor vibrated with low mechanical rumbling. Siren touched a broken panel and whispered, "This place feels sad." Evan glanced at her, surprised. "Sad?" "Yes," Siren said softly. "It feels like a room that once helped people, now hurt by them." Evan didn't understand how she sensed such things, but he didn't question it. Her world had taught her to feel emotion even in silence. Maybe that was her strength. As they walked, Siren finally spoke again. "In my world, we believed violence is like a storm. It destroys everything, even after the storm ends." Evan slowed his steps. "What made your people choose peace?" Siren's eyes lowered. "Long ago, we almost destroyed ourselves," she whispered. "We learned that fear grows fast, but healing grows slowly. So we chose healing." Before Evan could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed ahead. He pushed Siren behind a generator and drew his small blaster. Siren crouched beside him, trying not to shake. 3 attackers walked into the hall, their voices low. "Varrock wants the girl locked down before the station reinforcements arrive. So she's that important? She's the key. With her, humans gain leverage." Siren's breath caught in her throat. "Leverage? What does that mean?" She whispered. Evan's jaw tightened. "It means they don't see you as a person," he said quietly. "They see you as something to control." Siren felt her heart ache. How can someone look at another life and see only power? The attackers moved past, unaware that Evan and Siren were hiding. Once the hall was clear, they continued toward the communication relay room. But when they reached the door, Evan froze. A familiar figure stood inside, working on the control panel. The human ambassador who often worked with Siren's father. "Ambassador Halle." Siren stepped forward in confusion. "Halle? You can help us." But Halle turned around slowly, his face cold. "No, Siren," he said quietly. "I am the one who let them in." Siren stopped breathing. Evan stepped between them quickly. "Why?" he demanded. Hale's voice was calm, almost empty. "Your father's peace treaty would weaken humans. We would lose control of the outer worlds." Siren shook her head, stepping back in pure shock. "You lived beside my father. You shared meals with us. You smiled at me every day. How could your heart choose this?" Halle raised a small weapon. "You are too important. Once we capture you, your father will abandon the treaty." Evan pulled Siren behind him. The hall lights flickered red. More attackers were on the way. Gunfire echoed from the far corridor. The entire station shook under the pressure of the battle building around them. Siren placed her glowing hand on Evan's arm. "Do not fight alone," she whispered. "My people believe even fear can be softened. If we face it together." Evan nodded. He believed her. Even in this violent world, outside, boots thundered toward the relay room. Inside, Halle aimed his weapon with cold precision. Siren's glow brightened with fear and courage mixed together. And Evan prepared for the hardest fight yet. A fight not only against enemies, but against a betrayal that reached into the highest ranks of peace itself. Asterisk gunfire echoed in the hallway outside the relay room, shaking the walls as Evan positioned himself between Siren and Ambassador Holly. Siren's glow flickered with fear, but she kept her hand on Evan's arm. Trying to stay brave, Holly tightened his grip on the weapon, his expression cold and confident. "You cannot win, Evan," he said. "The obsidian front is everywhere in the station. Reinforcements will not arrive in time." Evan's voice was steady. "You betrayed both humans and Lycerans. You helped extremists end peace." Hale's jaw tightened. "Peace would destroy human control. I acted for the greater future." Siren stepped forward, unable to stay quiet anymore. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the air like clear light. "Control built from pain is not a future. It is only fear pretending to be power." Holly froze for a moment, shocked by her words. Siren's silver eyes glowed brighter now, full of sorrow rather than fear. "You lived beside my father," she said softly. "He trusted you. I trusted you. And still you opened the doors to hatred." Holly looked away, unable to meet her gaze. But before anyone could speak again, the sound of metal boots pounded closer. The attackers were seconds away. Evan grabbed Siren's wrist and pulled her behind a large relay console. "Holly is stalling for them," he whispered. "We need to activate the emergency beacon before they break through." Siren nodded, trying to steady her shaking hands. Evan reached the control panel and began typing rapidly. Lines of code flashed across the screen. The emergency beacon needed time to warm up. Too much time. The door behind them began to bend as attackers rammed it. Siren stepped back, her breath trembling. She had never been surrounded by violence like this. Her heart ached, not just from fear, but from the pain of watching humans destroy themselves. "Evan," she whispered, "if they break in, we cannot stop them." "We can," he said without looking away from the controls. "We must." The door finally burst open. Varrock and his armed soldiers stormed in. Weapons drawn and ready, Evan spun to shield Siren, firing quick shots to hold them back. Sparks burst across the floor as bullets hit the metal. Siren ducked. Behind him, her glowing hands shaking in panic, Varrock pointed at her, shouting, "Take her alive! Kill the officer!" Siren felt terror rise in her chest. Her world never believed in killing. Now humans shouted the word like it was normal. She looked at Evan fighting alone and felt something inside her break. Not fear, but determination. Without thinking, Siren stepped out from behind the console. "Stop!" she cried. Her voice echoed across the room with strange strength. Everyone froze just for a heartbeat. And in that single moment, Siren's glow exploded into bright light. Her body shone like a living star. The light washed over the room with warm energy. It was not an attack. It was pure emotion, fear, hope, and compassion woven together. Varrock stumbled back, covering his eyes. What is she doing?" Evan turned in shock. Siren, no. But Siren wasn't trying to fight. Her voice shook as she spoke. "I do not want to hurt anyone," she said. "But I will not let you destroy peace." Her glow grew stronger, wrapping the room in soft white warmth. The soldiers hesitated, confused by a light that felt like calm instead of danger. Even Varrock lowered his weapon slightly, shaken by the purity of her energy. Siren took a small step toward them, tears in her eyes. "You think violence makes you strong," she whispered, "but it only makes your heart small. It takes away the light inside you. Look at yourselves. You are angry because you are afraid. But fear can end only if you let it go." Her words were simple, but they struck the room with surprising force. Even hardened soldiers looked uncertain. Varrock's hands shook, though he tried to hide it. He had never faced someone who met violence with compassion instead of hate. Behind Siren, Evan pressed the last command on the panel. The emergency beacon activated, sending a bright blue signal pulsing across the station. Reinforcements were coming, fast, Varric saw the relay activate and shouted in panic. "Stop them!" He raised his weapon again, but Evan grabbed Siren and pulled her behind cover. Gunfire erupted again, but this time the station alarms answered with a new sound, the sound of arriving Alliance forces. Moments later, armored peacekeepers stormed the relay room, surrounding Varric's soldiers. The extremists threw down their weapons. Overwhelmed and outnumbered, Varric tried to run, but two peacekeepers tackled him to the ground. Hall had dropped his weapon and surrendered quietly, his face pale and empty. When the smoke cleared, Siren stepped forward slowly, her glow dimmer now but calm. She looked at the defeated soldiers, not with anger, but with sadness. Her father arrived soon after. Rushing to embrace her, Evan stepped back, relieved and exhausted. Siren turned to him with soft eyes and whispered, "You protected peace." "Even in darkness?" Evan shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "You reminded the galaxy what peace looks like." Siren smiled gently. Her world had changed forever, but she had not lost her light. She had only learned how bright it could truly shine.